Okay, so welcome. This is My New Good Life Plus, and we're looking at phase four, facing the threats. We've just briefly walked through the first parts of the learning adventure. So we're introducing the threats and looking at how the threats can show up as how it affects me, how it affects my community, and how it affects the world. And briefly looked at the New Life Phases of Grief inspired by Kubler-Ross. So this is what Bernard took and looked at, okay, if people are going through these phases or similar phases in response to what's going on in the world, how can they deal with it? And his four ingredients of active accepting hope. So there was this famous work by Joanna Macy called Active Hope. What New Good Life does is add a word which is accepting, which Bernard feels strongly is quite important. And so in active accepting hope, he looks at how you can transform the kind of original reaction of denial into grounded attention, anger into protective energy, bargaining into meaningful action, and depression into deep attachment. So that's where we've got to. Julia, I think you were going to mention something.
Yeah, I think relating to that and the phases, almost like the phases that the people go through.
Yeah.
And one of the things that in a group of leaders where we were talking about this and talking about how sometimes the leaders are not, or most of the time even, not at the same, not in the same phase as their teams when this happens. So the being mindful that there are phases, first of all, then being mindful of where they are, and then also being mindful of where their teams might be. And that might also mean something different in terms of how they need to support them. So
Mhm.
if they're already at the bargaining phase and their team's still in denial, they're not going to be aligned. So it's this mindfulness of where am I in comparison to the people around me? And is it my job in the sense of if I'm a leader, is this also my responsibility for the people around me that I need to be mindful of where they might be? So in that relationship. And then also when you go to the four further down where it's the reframing, right?
Yeah.
The interesting one that I thought there was with the ingredients and the possible transformation into different things is how do I get more of the transformed version of it?
Mhm.
So can I, for example, when there's depression, I came across a clip from someone who was talking about depression, and this is a woman who I believe lives in Africa. And so she was talking about depression, and she talks about how depression in her village, it doesn't happen because the community will take care of it. So it's the deep attachment. They will turn up outside of schedule. They will notice that someone's not participating. They will get that person to just come to the market or whatever it might be and then, live that deep attachment, which I thought was quite interesting. So the counterparts to what makes us unstable is finding whatever counterbalances that. So, for example, the community.
Yes. Well, it's kind of related to the other thing I was mentioning before we um, turn on the camera. Yeah, that's interesting. So I like what you brought in there about if you're a leader or a manager, people may be at different phases. So you may be at different phases from members of your team, and members of your team may be at different phases. And so having that awareness that there are different phases that people can be going through. And so not, of course, not everybody goes through the Kubler-Ross phases in a nice linear fashion, or they don't experience them all. But I think it's still quite a helpful little model to at least raise awareness that people do respond differently and go through different phases. So your question at the end there was that, and then you raised the point that this African community or community in Africa, um, they never really got to grief because they're already kind of dealing with it as a community.
So this was specifically the question that was raised was how does your village deal with people having depression? I'm happy to share the clip if I can find it quickly, even in
Yeah.
this call. But it was quite an interesting observation as I was listening to it, since it was in the space of this week and and reading and digesting this information. So looking at how does this add as a counterbalance to the reaction that is creating the instability. So
Mm,
how can we add things if we're looking at it, like a scale? On the one side, we do have depression. How do we balance it out? What do we put on the other side to balance it?
mhm,
And so that sense of community, and I might add here, that's exactly what I experienced last year, although I didn't have the words for it like I do now. It's exactly that kind of community that helped me deal with the phase of my life I was in and navigating large changes in my life,
mhm,
coming out of a corporate job, setting up my own business, and feeling quite unsettled. And there may have even been, even if it's not diagnosed, there may have been some depression ingredients there.
mhm, mhm.
So, from that own experience, that really landed for me. That's why I'm
Yeah.
talking about this one specifically.
Well, it'd be great if you could share some of the clip you mentioned. That
Yeah,
sounds
happy
really
to.
interesting. Any reaction from anybody to what Julia was saying? Mhm. One of the things, as I was reading through this again and kind of thinking about it in preparation for this conversation, I did think that it didn't give much in the way of tools to help you deal with people who are facing different stages of the Kubler-Ross. Um, and this is why I think my mind, when I was reading through this book, Letting Go, made me think about what kind of activity could I include to provide some kind of practical help to people in dealing with grief. So maybe this is a moment to bring it in and just share what I've come up with. Because I would be interested, as I say, it's hot off the press. Finished literally a few minutes ago. Um, I'm sticking the link to it in the chat, but I'll just take you through briefly what is included and what is in it. And so let me just take you through it. So I guess you can see my screen now. So this is the document that I've just dropped into the chat. And so is it opening for you? Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Sheila. So this is what I have put down. So, the Buddha over 2,500 years ago observed that most of our suffering is related to desire and attachment. So he talks about two arrows. I don't know if you remember this. He talks about the first arrow, which is what life throws at you. So you get your first arrow in you, and that causes a certain amount of pain. But then the second arrow is all your resistance to what is. So resistance to the fact that you've just got an arrow. And I think that I said once, it's a little saying I picked up somewhere, I'm not sure where it was, that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So I regularly try and remind myself that most of the suffering I feel is optional, and I'm giving it to myself. And so, in helping people deal with grief, what I wondered was whether this kind of exercise might be helpful. And so the phases are here, an overview of the process, and I've actually included how it's kind of related to the My New Good Life, the new My New Good Life program, Thriving in Disruption. And basically, the process is start by identifying what you're attached to. So, for example, I've got some examples in there: health, body and health, like mobility, energy, appearance. I mean, as you're getting older, I've just spent a week with my elderly parents in the UK, 98 and 93, and you just think, oh God, this is what's coming. And so there's a certain amount of letting go of physical capabilities that I think happens. Identity, um, expectations of the future, lifestyle, relationships. And often when people are confronted with what's going on in the world and start to think about it, I think one of the things that they can start grieving about is that they had all of the expectations of how their life would unfold, and they realize it's not going to unfold quite the way they'd hoped. And so you're having to let go of future expectations. So the first part of the exercise is identifying attachments. And I guess you could do that quite easily. So what you might want to do is to, if it feels like it's useful, and it's been kind of useful for me so far, is to just go through and see what attachments you have. And then you can kind of circle some to test out. And then the next phase is digging deeper into one or two or three. So, for example, I notice being sort of semi-retired, or at least not having much income now, what I notice is finances has become more of an issue, because you kind of realize that what you've saved has to keep you going until you die. So financial, it seems to be more of an issue with people who are kind of in retirement. And so I'm sort of moved into that realm. And so I look at what is sort of a certain amount of income, what did it give me? Choice, comfort, maybe a certain amount of status. What's perhaps some of the deeper needs, kind of safety, control, and dignity? And what would happen? What's the feeling if I lose it? A certain amount of anxiety, maybe humiliation. So these are just examples. So just to give you an example so that it helps you complete the exercise. So I could imagine doing this with somebody, a coachee. Now, I'm interested to know whether you think you could, whether it would work for you. And then the next phase, you could be distinguishing between the healthy and unhealthy versions of attachment. So I gave a couple of examples, maybe the second one here, my children being okay, healthy, I care deeply about their well-being and want to support them. Fear-based dependency, I can't feel okay unless I know they're okay. And resilient connection, I'll support, love, and influence where I can, but while building my capacity to remain grounded even when their path is difficult. So maybe that's the kind of example. So the next part could be trying to distinguish between the different types of attachment, some more helpful than others. And then the next phase is looking at control, influence, and no control at all, but you just have to accept. So what's within, can you see that okay? Maybe I can make it a bit bigger. I see Sheila squinting at something. And so one of the things you might want to do here is to go through looking at, for example, money, income and savings, what can be controlled. Well, if I was worried about my job, developing my knowledge and skills, saving wisely. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, one of the small reasons I do this My New Good Life stuff is that it keeps my skills relatively active and up to date, so that I could perhaps turn back on some income if things really got tricky. So I can control that by making sure I'm staying up to date with what's going on. What can be influenced, maybe the impression my clients have of my value, and what's beyond my control, Trump underworld economy. Okay, so that might be a useful exercise to go through. It felt like it was useful as I had a quick practice of it. And then there's a slightly more designing practical resilient actions. So this is, for example, money. Um, example again. So what could I do? Well, what's the zone? What's the risk? What practical action could I take? Review spending, build reserves, reduce dependency. What inner practice might I work on? So there's kind of external practice and inner practice. So I might work on fear of scarcity, stuff like that. Struck me as potentially quite a useful exercise. Yeah. And then going deeper into the inner work. So for each major attachment, ask if this changed or was lost, what quality would I need more in myself? So for example, acceptance, adaptive capacity, setting boundaries, in particular relationships, courage, creativity. What are the kind of inner capacities that I need to develop to live in a more uncertain world? And then there's some micro practice of letting go. I mean, so things like letting go of needing to be right in one conversation, which is a particularly tough one for me. Letting go of other members of the family, what they do. Um, letting go of warm showers, another one. I see somebody else, practicing actually having a cold shower just to see what a little bit of suffering is like. Occasionally I tried to do that. So there's some micro giving ups just to build your giving up muscles, giving up attachment muscles, and then dealing with the grief explicitly. So in this book, one of the things it's talking about is actually the fact that, and maybe this is particularly challenging for me, having a bit of a hyper rational saboteur going on. It's sitting with the emotions and noticing them come and go. And the amazing thing is that well, at least for me, when I just pay attention to them, after a few seconds, minute, they tend to fade anyway or on their own. So actually just sitting with and letting go of emotions, I found quite helpful. So that's the exercise. So just interested to get your feedback on what you think of that as something that might help in terms of coaching people going through some of the Kubler-Ross grief.
Um, You've worked very hard on that, Rob. It's I just like the way that it's got breadth and depth at the same time across it. So I think that's really useful. I think initially I was wondering, oh, are I stepping into therapy space? And how we'd manage that. Because I think if I was presented with a client that was in that grief space, I might pause and think, are we in the right place for each other? But I think obviously working through what that grief is about and where that might be showing up, then moving it into the practical aspects of exploring what's showing up for them, and encouraging them to think about, particularly like the connection with themselves, encourage them to think about the connection themselves, moving it, I suppose, deeper from perhaps what might be on the surface for them. Because then when you've initially said what tool could we use, I thought it's the control tool. It is the control tool, and I think bringing that in then makes it the coaching for me.
Mhm.
That where I feel I was in safe space for coaching by using the controlled influence model. But I think that the work beforehand, though, using this would make that exercise really valuable, because you've got them to explore what's there for them, particularly if it's their emotions and
Mhm,
also their system. So I think this is bringing through as well, thinking about their
mhm.
system they're in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm perhaps a little bit cavalier about this boundary between therapy and coaching
Okay.
sometimes. So it's a good reminder for me.
I mean, it's just an initial reaction. I suppose it's just it's based on my own my level of experience. Not massive, but it's not new either. It's just that this is interesting to uh
Mhm.
to explore. Um, yeah.
Any other reaction?
Hmm.
Yeah, Julia.
I find it very useful, and I like the structure of it because I think I may have shared this before when we did the first My New Good Life. I struggled with this one particularly, and even the engaging took me longer than it should have been to even engage in the thinking around this topic and to engage with it. So having found this resistance and then having to guide someone through an area where they might be resisting also.
Hmm.
I wasn't getting to the point where I found keys apart from the one that I did find, and I now shared in the chat, but that I was trying to get to places where I could unlock it for them. Because then my responsibility becomes how do I hold the space and how do I help them navigate? Right? So it was this piece that for me was still missing in a way because yes, we've identified it and yes, we've now engaged with it and now what? Other than,
Yes.
of course, PQ reps and all of those wonderful things that I got to learn only because I've been engaging with you in this program.
Yeah.
Um, and yet that didn't feel like I was fully equipped to support them.
Well, that's why I was thinking that I needed to introduce something like this because when I was looking back at it, I didn't really see a tool that would help. It was kind of interesting, I think, what was in the learning adventure and what Bernard's done, but it didn't strike me as very practical in terms of something I could actually use with the client so much. So that's why I wanted to try something else.
Much
And
I mean,
appreciated.
yeah, totally. I mean, I haven't gone through the learning adventure yet. So I'm coming at this just from what we've shared today. Um, but I think so Kubler-Ross, I introduced in my work around change management, and discuss it with all the critique around it as well. But that how people, respond to change, I guess, using that as well through that letting go bit as well. This is sort of teamwork as opposed to sort of one to one.
mhm,
Um, and that is linked into, and I do link that into what can you control, what can't you control, what can you influence.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it can be quite helpful, like you're suggesting, to look at specific themes that are coming up. So one of the things I'm finding more and more as clients are considering their situations, their jobs, for example, if that's something that is under threat as
Mhm.
part of the situation, or they have lost their role, their job,
Mm.
their grade, their car, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
There are certain things that they need to navigate, and then looking at that specifically, and digging deeper, as you suggest, and looking at what am I holding onto, and is it worth holding onto, or is it worth examining showing curiosity and exploring how else it might be, or how else I might hold this new situation.
Mhm. Okay, let me see. I'd like to get your thoughts on something else, because in the My New Good Life program, we're trying to give a lighter version. And so for those of you who are doing the program, you'll know that each week there's a little experiential exercise. And so I've just, well, ChatGPT's just knocked this out for me as to go in as a little experiential exercise around letting go. I'm just wondering what you think of it. It literally popped out of ChatGPT half an hour ago, so I haven't really thought it through too much yet. But just some sort of physical, experiential exercise of just letting stuff go, whether that would be something that could maybe be part of it. Maybe not letting go of a cup. Maybe that's a bit.
I not this practice because it's depend on with who I am in nature, but I'm using this technique in nature in forest bathing. It's like when we are checking out, when we are going out from nature after the whole tour or after the whole session. Basically, there is an exercise that somebody needs to find something, an object from the forest, and think of something which this person would like to let go, and then literally just throw away that object and let go that feeling or thoughts or whatever the person would like to let it in the forest or and just move away from it. So and it works really well.
Okay, so I've got to find things which are not fragile if they're dropped. So I need to have another chat with ChatGPT just to. But they're just trying to find something fairly light, a little experiential thing. So I think it could work. Okay.
Yeah.
It's lovely, Rob. Thank you.
So hopefully that will help provide something a little bit more practical for dealing with the emotions people are going through in response to what's going on. And I mean, if you look at it and you see how it could be refined, please let me know. If you can suggest any improvements, please, throw them at me. I'm interested. Okay, so the other thing that we hadn't touched on was the museum and the basement or the cellar. Did you have any comments, questions about that aspect of the program? So obviously we're working our way fairly systematically through Bernard's transformational canvas. And so, yeah, museum. Funnily enough, much to my surprise, in the pilot of this program, the museum and the basement came out something that the coaches really liked and were using with their clients, which actually was a bit of a surprise to me. But do you use something like this? Can you see it being relevant in your coaching?
I think so. I've not got to the detail of it yet, but that does sound like things about, because it feels about progress, doesn't it? It feels like if you're encouraging client to move forward, but what are you going to leave behind? So you almost encourage your client to feel that there's that hope that there's capacity perhaps for them to be able to do what they need to do, because you've created this sort of metaphor around what you're going to park where, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really only just occurred to me, but the museum, that's a place where I've acknowledging something that's been part of my past, but I'm now letting it go. So the letting it go again is kind of is linked to letting go of grief and stuff like that.
Mm.
So there's the museum is the bits of me that I want to acknowledge, but I'm kind of letting them go. And then the basement is, well, I'm not quite ready to let it go yet, so I'm going to not, it's still going to be there because I don't feel that the time is right to let it go. So I think that's the distinction, at least for me,
Okay.
Julia.
So I've had a little bit of a different take on the museum, and it came with an exercise I did as part of writing chapters, life chapters exercise. And sometimes it's about curating to me. It's about how do I display things, maybe slightly differently. How do I arrange them together slightly differently so they tell a different story?
Oh yeah, lovely.
So
That's
it's the
nice.
more the narrative practice of, oh, but look, if you add it together in this sequence, or if you curate it slightly different and you add this aspect, then actually you were doing this all along. So it's the life storytelling in hindsight, it makes sense. And so that was an interesting experience. And if you're looking at it from that angle, then it can be proudly displayed. And it's nothing that you do need to let go of because you're rearranging it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just the thought. And
Mm.
on the basement one, I do appreciate the concept of, I know you're there, but I'm not ready to address it. So thank you, but not now. And I think those are good places to to also park things and not acknowledge them or not yet. And that's a good thing too. And it's healthy to address things as you're able to cope with them.
Yeah, and maybe coming back to what Sheila mentioned, that's the place where maybe it's more therapy. I mean, maybe that's
Mm.
if you want to deal with that, that's maybe not the My New Good Life program. That's more therapy. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
looking in the past, isn't it? To then have a conversation about the past, not about what does that past mean for the future. So I wonder if that's where the line needs to be in
Mhm,
terms of my understanding or also my definitions of the two disciplines and two separate realms.
mhm. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
I agree with Julia actually with the museum part and also with the basement part. If I think of the museum, for me, it's like something which is there, but I only look at it if I would like because it's something beautiful or something which I have gratitude for that. So sometimes it's really necessary in coaching for me, like remind the client, okay, what did you do for what you are proud of? And then go into your museum. So for me, the letting go part is partially right, partially not, because sometimes you need to have there that 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 beautiful ways which you look at it and you say, wow, what kind of wonder what they created 2000 years ago. But you don't look at it every day, actually, only if you would like. So for
Mm.
me, the letting go, it's a question mark.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, okay.
I think the museum metaphor is quite strong in the whole, um,
Yeah.
whatever we call it, the whole
Yes.
diagram.
Canvas,
The
yes.
canvas, that's it. Because of the interpretation and the way that you can play with that. Um, really good, useful. But I think if you were to stick to it in terms of within the context of the canvas, wondered in practical terms whether that could confuse the client. or I would go off on a tangent probably, because we'd probably end up in the museum in that respect, you know. What does it mean to you? What you're going to put on display? What you're going to put in the, you know, behind the scenes, you know, and all this sort of stuff, that you could do. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I've got a new perspective on the museum. Yeah, Julie, I see your
I
hand.
I have a question on the museum in the pirate picture.
Yes,
You
yes.
have
I
it
was just
close
going.
by. What's it again? Is it the treasure uh,
Uh,
chamber?
no, it's actually. I think I'm wondering if I've got it to hand. Yes, because I'm working on a workshop for this coming weekend, coming Friday. Um, yeah, so
I
I
can
actually
find it. I remember that there is something like skeletons, which I'm guessing is
that, that's more the
but that's
basement.
like that's the basement, right? And I have a clear, but I don't have the museum, the artifacts as such.
Yeah, so you notice this is the museum is has got the interesting pieces in it, and as you were saying, I kind of see them and arrange them and put them, and I was thinking about the picture and how they're organized in the boat. So kind of beautifully arranged.
Yeah.
And the current image of the basement is the sort of skeletons in the cupboard kind of thing at the bottom, where you don't really want to go.
Which is and it can be because it's the not now.
Yes.
And isn't the museum the bit about, but is it more about the acceptance part of this journey? And that you accept the things that are made, that are part of your past. Um, yeah, I don't know. I need to think a lot more about this.
Mm,
Bit like the work that
Like
we
you
were doing
thinking.
on the sort of, you know, when we were doing the live chapters work, you know, earlier on, and how what has defined you and built your resilience up because of the things that have, you know, have occurred to you. Um, and that's your today sort of thing. Um,
yes, it's interesting because I think it's the next workshop or the next week in the Mind of Your Life program. I introduce a river of life, which is similar to the book exercise, where you look back and look at
right.
how things. And so, yeah, it's when you look back, you can somehow join the dots. So I also
Yeah.
include the video. There's a famous video kind of looking back to join the dots um, by Steve Jobs. And
Oh, okay.
yes, so yeah, I mean, sometimes as I was going through my career, it didn't seem to be making much sense, and I was hopping about. And then in hindsight, you could start to see some sense, and I could start putting stuff in my museum that now, with hindsight, I can see that it was actually helpful.
Hmm.
That's what I meant with the rearranging.
Yes,
And
good. Yeah.
it's something that did happen to me last year, or I was making an effort to look and re-examine what was going on to allow me to see things in a different light, which led me to the museum metaphor of, you know, if you start adding lighting or you rearrange things or you place things with a certain intention, and you look at them in a different way, then you can find patterns that you might have not seen before.
Mm,
That's this re-examining and it's a sense making in hindsight in a way, and then looking at how else could that, you know, how else could that be arranged so that it makes more sense for my now.
mm. No, 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 I get it now. Yeah, this has deepened my understanding of the museum. Thank you.
I'm trying. It's just one
Understanding and
perspective.
appreciation. That's
Thank you.
okay. So I'm kind of running over time here, but I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. Siobhan, you've been unusually quiet. Are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yes.
I loved listening to you all. Thanks.
Good. Well, lovely to see you all again. Oh, we just need you to perhaps agree when the next date might be appropriate.
How many adventures have we got?
I think we've got one more.
One more, right? Okay.
So here we are on the 3rd. If we go 3 weeks forward, we're in the 24th. No, I think there's a bit of a warning sign because I think there was a potential. Oh no, the 24th isn't going to be when we have our community meeting for those of you who are interested.
Oh, it might be because I've just done the poll and
Have
it's
you?
now joint now with
How
the
is
other
it?
date.
It's,
And the other date is the one I can't do, and the one that's the 24th is the one that's the joint is the one I can do. So let's
okay.
see.
All right.
I might tip that into the favor of the 24th then.
All right. Well, okay, you've got another day or two, but there's a lot going on. So what about the 23rd? Because that doesn't look like it's going to be anything on the 23rd. Would the 23rd work for you, or the 20? Maybe the Friday is the 26th.
What time though? This evening time or the morning
The
time?
morning.
Right, well, I can't do the 23rd morning because that's why I can't do the community one because
Okay.
No, 23rd is not good to me either.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the 26th is good for me in the morning.
Does the 26th work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morning is fine, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
9 o'clock CET. Okay.
That's Berlin. So is that
Yeah, I think it's the
Yeah.
same, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same.
So 9 o'clock, provisionally so 9 o'clock
Yeah.
on the Friday the 26th.
Perfect.
It's back to
Okay.
the old times. Great.
Okay.
The Friday mornings are always perfect. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's okay. I will double check. I think the driving disruption and not finding good life pilot's over by then, the first 5 weeks. So I think we're fine.
Okay.
And we said that would be Learning Adventure 5 completed.
Mm.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's learning, which is the strategic. It's the kind of next steps.
Thank you.
Elements.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, enjoy the next phase. I'll open it up very soon and give you a day or two to catch up, and then you'll be into the next one. All right. Lovely seeing you all again. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye. Have a nice
Bye,
evening
everyone.
or day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.